So you want to own a gym. Find a building, pack it with treadmills, and watch the memberships pour in. That's the plan sitting in your head, and honestly, it's not a bad one. Walk into any gym on a weekday evening and it looks like the easiest business on earth. Every treadmill is occupied. The waiting area is buzzing. There's a queue at the front desk. You watch that scene and think, this place has to be printing money. More people, more memberships, more cash. Simple. Here's the catch. You're staring at the 1 hour of the day that deceives you the most. The truth is, a gym isn't really a fitness business. It's a subscription business that happens to have dumbbells lying around. And once you grasp that distinction, everything about how a gym earns money and how it silently bleeds it starts making sense. Let's begin with what it genuinely costs to get through the door, because the price tag is far messier than rent a space and buy some equipment. There isn't a single kind of gym. There are several, and each one is essentially a different business dressed in the same tracksuit. At the low end sit the budget gyms, the $10 to $25 a month chains that stuff a supermarket-sized building with thousands of members and profit purely through volume. A single location like this can house 5,000 to 8,000 members while running on a skeleton crew. One tier up is the traditional commercial gym, complete with a weight floor, cardio machines, and a class schedule, typically priced between $40 and $70 a month.
Above that are the luxury health clubs, charging $150 or more a month and selling less of a gym and more of a lifestyle, spa treatments, co-working lounges, the whole package. Then come the boutique studios, small rooms sometimes under 3,000 square feet, built around a single class style, charging $50 to $150 a month or selling packs of individual sessions. And finally, the small brutal category, the one-on-one personal training studio, sometimes as tiny as 500 square feet, which doesn't sell memberships at all. It sells your time with a coach. Each of these is a different wager on the same underlying question. Do you profit from a huge crowd paying a little or a small group paying a lot? That single choice shapes every other number in the business. Now here's where the naive mental picture starts to crumble. You'd assume the expensive part is the equipment. It isn't. The expensive part is turning an empty box of a building into something that can legally and safely hold sweating human bodies. A commercial landlord will usually demand 3 to 6 months of rent up front as a security deposit before you've touched a single renovation. Then comes the build-out. Rubber flooring that can absorb the shock of a dropped barbell without cracking the concrete beneath costs $10,000 to $40,000. Locker rooms and showers need moisture-resistant materials and proper drainage plumbing, another $10,000 to $50,000. Mirrors alone, floor to ceiling, can run $3,000 to $12,000 once installed. Then there's the part almost nobody budgets for correctly: air.
A standard retail space isn't built to handle a room full of people generating heat and moisture for hours at a stretch. You need industrial-grade ventilation, and the required amount of fresh air isn't a guess, it's a formula. Building codes call for roughly 20 cubic feet of fresh air per minute for every person exercising in the room, plus a smaller allowance for square footage. Run that formula on a 5,000 square foot gym floor holding 100 people at peak hours, and you need over 2,000 cubic feet of fresh air pumped in every single minute. That's not a fan, that's a full HVAC overhaul, and it can cost $10,000 to $50,000 before you've sold a single membership. Add up the deposit, the renovation, the licenses, the insurance, the launch marketing, and a cash cushion to survive the slow opening months. And even a modest mid-sized commercial gym can demand $300,000 to over $1 million just to unlock the front door. So far, so good. Now let's talk about what can go wrong. Equipment is the next trap, and it's bigger than most people expect. A single commercial-grade treadmill costs $2,000 to $8,000. A gym needs 6 to 12 of them just for a baseline cardio section. Selectorized strength machines run $1,000 to $5,000 a piece, and a real gym floor needs 12 to 20 of them. Add power racks, dumbbells, benches, and accessories, and the equipment bill for a mid-sized gym alone can land anywhere between $40,000 and $250,000. Here's the decision that trips people up: buy the equipment outright or lease it. Buying feels safer. You own it. It's an asset, no monthly lease payment looming over you. But buying drains your cash reserves right when you need them most, during those uncertain early months before members show up in numbers. And treadmills don't last forever. Heavy daily use wears a machine down far faster than home use ever would. Leasing sounds like the smarter move. Small monthly payments keep cash free.
You can upgrade equipment every few years so it never looks dated. Sounds great. Here's the catch. Lease financing on equipment can carry an interest rate around 8% annually, meaning over the life of the lease, you end up paying meaningfully more than the equipment was ever worth. And the lease doesn't care whether your gym is thriving. If membership dries up and you have to shut the doors, those payments don't stop. There are contractual obligation that follows you out. Neither choice is wrong, but whichever you pick, you've just locked in a large fixed cost that must be paid every single month, regardless of how many people walk in that day. Now, location. This is the decision first-time owners get wrong most often because they assume a good location simply means somewhere crowded. It's more specific than that. Roughly 80% of a gym's membership base comes from within a 10 to 15-minute drive or transit ride of the building. That's the entire addressable market, not the city, not the metro area, a 10-minute radius. Inside that radius, the local income level has to match your pricing. A luxury club charging $150 a month can't survive in a neighborhood built on a budget income base, no matter how nice the equipment is. And a high-visibility storefront in a major city can cost $25 to $120 per square foot annually in rent, compared to $12 to $20 in a rural area. Pick the wrong side of that gap and you've committed to a rent bill that demands a membership base your neighborhood simply can't supply. Now we arrive at the part of this business that explains everything else, the membership itself. Picture a coin flip, except instead of heads or tails, imagine every person who signs up falls into one of two futures. In one, they show up 3 times a week, every week for a year. In the other, they show up twice in January, feel good about themselves, and never return, while still paying every month. Which of those two members is more valuable to the gym? The second one. And this is the single most important idea in the entire fitness business. So let's slow down and actually run the math.
The person coming 3 times a week uses hot water for showers, wears down the treadmill belt, needs towels laundered, and takes up floor space during the exact hour the gym is most crowded, which can annoy other members and push them toward canceling. Every visit costs the gym a small amount of real money and real capacity. The person who signed up in January and never returned costs the gym almost nothing. No hot water, no towel, no equipment wear, no crowding. In economic terms, they're a customer whose cost of service is essentially zero, while their monthly payment keeps arriving like clockwork, flowing straight to the bottom line. Industry data consistently shows that roughly 2 out of every 3 gym members rarely or never use the gym they're paying for. Read that again. The majority of a typical low-cost gym's revenue comes from people who aren't exercising there. This isn't an accident. It's the business model. Think about the building itself. A gym with 6,000 plus members could never physically fit even a fifth of them on the floor at once. Fire code wouldn't allow it, and the equipment couldn't handle it. A typical gym floor might legally cap out around 200 to 300 people at a time. If even 10% of a 7,000-member gym showed up simultaneously, you'd have 700 people crammed into a room built for maybe 250, a fire code violation within minutes. So the gym isn't selling access to a room, it's selling a statistical bet that most members won't show up at the same time, and a large share won't show up at all. The building only needs to be big enough for the fraction who actually attend, not the total who pay. This is why gyms don't secretly want every member to become a daily regular. A gym full of daily regulars would need a much bigger, much costlier building with far higher utility bills to serve the same number of paying customers. The forgotten membership sitting unused on someone's bank statement is quietly one of the most profitable customers a gym can have. There's a seasonal wrinkle worth walking through because it shapes the entire financial calendar of a gym. Roughly 12% of all annual gym signups happen in January alone, driven by New Year's resolutions. Gyms lean into this hard. Discounted joining fees, low-cost trials, a burst of advertising crammed into a few weeks. That single month can hand an owner a large cash injection and a wave of new monthly billing. But the wave that comes in fast leaves almost as fast. Around half of new members stop attending within 6 months of joining. Of those who joined specifically as a January resolution, up to 80% have quit showing up by summer.
February tends to be the riskiest month of all, the point where initial motivation fades before a real habit forms. Experienced owners don't panic about this. They build their entire cash flow around it, using the January surge to fund a reserve that carries them through the quieter summer months when new signups slow down. The owners who get blindsided are the ones who spend that January windfall as if it were permanent revenue instead of the seasonal spike it actually is. There's also a structural choice underneath all this. Build an independent gym from scratch or buy into an established franchise. A franchise hands you a known brand name, a proven layout, standardized software, and often better equipment pricing through corporate purchasing deals. Valuable, especially for a first-time owner, but not free. Franchise agreements typically require an upfront fee of $20,000 to $60,000, an ongoing royalty of 5 to 10% of gross revenue paid back to the parent company monthly, plus roughly 2% of revenue into a shared national marketing fund. An independent owner keeps every dollar of profit generated. A franchise owner permanently shares a slice of the top line in exchange for brand recognition and support. Worth it only if the extra membership volume that brand pulls in outweighs what's handed back every month. Now here's where psychology matters just as much as the math. Why do people keep paying for something they don't use? Part of it is optimism at the moment of signing up. The membership feels like a promise to a future version of yourself. Part of it is what economists call a commitment device. Paying for the gym is supposed to be the thing that forces you to go, and part of it is pure inertia. Canceling means admitting the plan didn't work, and for a monthly fee of $10 to $30, most people would rather quietly keep paying than confront that. The gym's physical design reinforces this, whether members notice or not. Clean, simple layouts with clear pathways reduce the intimidation a newcomer feels, keeping them around long enough for the habit to either form or quietly fade. Mirrors around the strength area help people track progress, which can boost motivation, but too many mirrors in a beginner-friendly zone can backfire and heighten self-consciousness instead. Lighting is chosen deliberately too. Weight rooms often get harder, more directional light that highlights muscle definition, while stretching and recovery areas use softer lighting for a calmer feel. Even music tempo is chosen with purpose, since faster music has been shown to help people push through workouts with less perceived effort. None of this is decoration. It's all aimed at one target: keeping a member emotionally attached to the gym for as long as possible, whether or not they're actually using it.
And gyms know this, which is why leaving one is almost never as easy as joining. Many membership contracts require cancellation in writing, not by phone, not through an app, but in person at the club or via certified mail with a return receipt. Contracts often demand 30 to 60 days of advance notice before the next billing cycle, guaranteeing the gym collects at least one more month of dues even after you've decided to leave. And when a credit card expires or a payment fails, that alone accounts for roughly 30 to 40% of all cancellations, which is why gyms run entire departments dedicated to chasing down failed payments before a member can drift away entirely. This friction hasn't gone unnoticed by regulators. The Federal Trade Commission tried introducing a national rule in 2024 requiring that canceling a subscription be just as easy as signing up for one. A federal appeals court struck that rule down on procedural grounds in the summer of 2025, and the agency has since restarted the process. Some cities have acted on their own. New York City, for instance, introduced a local click-to-cancel rule taking effect in October 2026, with penalties exceeding $500 per violation for gyms that make canceling deliberately difficult. Keep this in mind because it reveals something important about the business you're considering. If a gym's survival depended on happy, engaged, frequently attending members, it wouldn't need to make canceling this hard. The fact that cancellation friction is such a core part of gym operations tells you a large share of its revenue comes from people who wish they weren't paying. Before we get to what can go wrong, there's a second layer of hidden cost that catches nearly every first-time gym owner off guard, and it has nothing to do with treadmills. It's the music. Playing background music in a commercial space isn't the same as playing it in your living room. In the United States, any business playing music for customers is legally required to pay for a public performance license, and there isn't just one organization to pay. Several performing rights organizations represent different songwriters and publishers, and a gym typically needs licenses with more than one simultaneously. Minimum annual fees for each license can run $200 to nearly $600, and once you're paying all of them together, the combined bill for a single location can land somewhere between $1,300 and $4,000 a year. Skip this, and the risk isn't small. These licensing organizations send field investigators into gyms, bars, and retail spaces specifically to check for unlicensed music. Under federal copyright law, statutory damages for willful infringement can run from $750 per song up to $30,000 per song, and as high as $150,000 per song if a court deems the infringement intentional. A gym owner who assumes a personal streaming subscription is good enough for the sound system has quietly taken on legal risk worth far more than the license fee would have ever cost.
That's a small example, but it points to the bigger lesson of this whole business. Almost none of the real costs are the ones printed on the equipment catalog. They're buried in a licensing agreement, a lease clause, or a maintenance contract nobody reads carefully until something breaks. And plenty of things do break. Heavy daily use wears down treadmill belts, strength machine cables, and upholstery far faster than home use ever would. And mid-sized gyms typically budget $1,000 to $3,000 a month just for ongoing equipment repair and replacement. Utility bills for a gym running constant ventilation, bright lighting, and hot water for showers can run $1,000 to $6,000 a month. None of these numbers are dramatic on their own. Stacked together month after month, they quietly eat into the exact margin the owner was counting on.
Now let's talk about whether a gym built entirely on this quiet subscription model can actually survive, because the honest answer is sometimes not. Take Bally Total Fitness at its peak. It was the largest health club chain in the United States, with locations nationwide and a business model built on aggressive long-term membership contracts, often financed over several years like a car loan. On paper, the model looked brilliant. Lock members into years of guaranteed payments and you've secured revenue in advance. So how does the largest fitness chain in the country end up filing for bankruptcy not once, but twice within a single year? The answer isn't that people stopped wanting to work out. It's structural. Aggressive sales tactics and long-term financing contracts triggered consumer protection lawsuits and accounting investigations. The company had built its empire on debt and contractual promises rather than genuine, sustainable member value, and when legal and financial pressure mounted, the whole structure gave way. Bally filed for bankruptcy in 2007 and again in 2008, before its assets were sold off piece by piece. A similar story played out with 24-Hour Fitness, once one of the largest gym chains in the country. It didn't collapse because people stopped exercising. It collapsed because it had taken on too much debt relative to its actual cash flow, and when that debt came due, scale alone wasn't enough to save it.
Here's the structural takeaway, because that's really the point of both stories. Neither company failed because nobody wanted a gym membership. They failed because the math connecting fixed costs, rent, debt payments, equipment financing, to actual reliable revenue broke down. A gym with thousands of members and full parking lots can still be one bad debt structure away from insolvency. The crowd visible on the gym floor tells you nothing about whether the underlying financial structure can hold. So how does a gym actually make money in plain mechanical terms once it's past all this? The core engine is simple. Monthly dues times number of members minus fixed costs. If a gym carries fixed monthly operating costs, rent, payroll, equipment payments, utilities, insurance, software of around $30,000 and charges an average of $89 a month per member, it needs roughly 337 paying members just to break even. Below that number, the gym loses money every month. Above it, additional members are almost pure profit because remember, the marginal cost of an inactive member is close to zero. That's the good news. Here's the volatility that follows right behind it. New gyms typically don't hit that break-even count on day one. It can take 12 to 18 months of accumulating members before the facility crosses into profitability, and every one of those months burns through the working capital reserve the owner set aside before opening. If the pre-opening sales push is weak, or a competitor opens nearby during that window, the runway can run out before the gym ever turns a profit. And membership itself isn't a stable, ever-growing number. The industry average for annual member churn sits around 30% to 40%. If a gym has 500 members and loses 5% of them every month, it has to acquire roughly 300 new members over the course of a year just to stay exactly where it started. That's not growth, that's running in place.
This is where a second revenue stream becomes essential, and it's the one with genuinely strong economics: personal training. A trainer working strictly one-on-one can only train so many people. At a typical rate of around $80 per session, capped at roughly 25 sessions a week to avoid burning the trainer out, over 50 working weeks a year, a single trainer working purely one-on-one tops out at around $100,000 in annual revenue. That's a hard ceiling. You can't add more hours to a day. The way around it is training multiple people at once. A coach running a semi-private session with 4 clients, each paying $40, brings in $160 for that single hour, roughly double the rate of one-on-one work, while each client individually pays less than they would for private coaching. This is why so many gyms have shifted towards small group training formats. It breaks the one trainer, 1 hour, 1 client ceiling that limits pure personal training revenue. Of course, the gym doesn't keep all of it. Trainers on payroll typically take a commission of 30 to 50% of what they bring in. If a session bills at $75 and the trainer takes half, the gym keeps $37.50 to cover equipment, space, and profit margin. Still, across a full roster of clients, personal training tends to be far more profitable per hour than a basic membership ever could be. One dedicated personal training client can be worth dozens of members who barely use their card.
Now let's put it all together and look at what actually happens over a full year, because this is where the two very different versions of this business reveal themselves. In the optimistic scenario, you've picked the right neighborhood, hit your break-even membership count on schedule, kept churn on the low end of normal, and built a healthy personal training program alongside your base of members.
Under those conditions, a mid-size independent gym can generate somewhere between $500,000 and $1.5 million a year in revenue, with a net profit margin of 10% to 20%. That can translate into an owner take-home of roughly $70,000 to $180,000 a year, a genuinely solid outcome for the work and capital involved. In the realistic scenario, 2 or 3 things go wrong that aren't exotic at all. They're the normal risks of this exact business. Churn runs at the high end of normal instead of the low end. A new budget chain opens 2 miles away and pulls price-sensitive members away with a cheaper monthly rate. Equipment starts needing more frequent repairs than expected, adding another $1,000 to $3,000 a month to overhead. Under those conditions, that same gym can slide from a comfortable double-digit profit margin into a single-digit margin or an outright loss during a slow season, even while the parking lot outside still looks reasonably full most evenings. The difference between those 2 outcomes in a single mid-sized gym can be well over $100,000 in a single year, and almost none of that swing shows up as a dramatic, visible event. No fire, no scandal, just a slightly higher cancellation rate, a slightly slower membership ramp, and a slightly heavier repair bill, compounding quietly month after month until the number at the bottom of the spreadsheet looks nothing like the plan.
So if you do decide to open a gym, remember the one thing that actually determines whether you succeed. It was never really about how many people you can get to sign up. It's about how well you can survive on the people who stop showing up.